In a democratic form of government, the real power of administration must reside in the elected arm of the state, subject to the confines of the Constitution. A constitutionally entrenched and democratically elected government needs to have control over its administration. The administration comprises of several public officers who are posted in the services of a particular government, irrespective of whether or not that government was involved in their recruitment. For instance, an officer recruited by a particular government may serve on deputation with another government. If a democratically elected government is not provided with the power to control the officers posted within its domain, then the principle underlying the triple chain of collective responsibility would become redundant. That is to say, if the government is not able to control and hold to account the officers posted in its service, then its responsibility towards the legislature as well as the public is diluted. The principle of collective responsibility extends to the responsibility of officers, who in turn report to the ministers. If the officers stop reporting to the ministers or do not abide by their directions, the entire principle of collective responsibilities is affected. A democratically elected government can perform only when there is an awareness on the part of officers of the consequences which may ensue if they do not perform. If the officers feel that they are insulated from the control of the elected government which they are serving, then they become unaccountable or may not show commitment towards their performance. We have already held that the relationship between the Union and the NCTD resembles an asymmetric federal model, where the latter exercises its legislative and executive control in specified areas of the state list and concurrent list. Article 239 AA, which conferred a special status to NCTD and constitutionally entrenched a representative form of government, was incorporated in the Constitution in the spirit of federalism, with the aim that the residents of the capital city must have a voice in how they are to be governed. It is the responsibility of the government of the NCTD to give expression to the will of the people of Delhi who elected it. Therefore, the ideal conclusion would be that GNCTD ought to have control over services subject to exclusion of subjects which are out of its legislative domain. If services are excluded from its legislative and executive domain, the ministers and executives and the executive who are charged with formulating policies in the territory of NCTD would be excluded from controlling the civil service officers who implement such executive decisions. The legislative and executive power of NCTD over entry 41 shall not extend over to services related to public order, police, and land. However, legislative and executive power over services such as Indian administrative services or joint cadre services, which are relevant for the implementation of policies and the vision of NCTD in terms of day-to-day administration of the region, shall lie with the NCTD. Officers thereunder may be serving in NCTD even if they were not recruited by the NCTD. In such a scenario, it would be relevant to refer as an example to some of the rules which clearly demarcate the control of all India or joint cadre services between the Union and the states. NCTD, similar to other states, also represents the representative form of government. The involvement of the Union of India in the administration of NCTD is limited by constitutional provisions, and any further expansion would be contrary to the constitutional scheme of governance. We reiterate that in light of Article 239 AA and the 2018 Constitution Bench judgment, the Lieutenant Governor is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers of NCTD in relation to matters within the legislative scope of NCTD. As we have held that NCTD has legislative power over services, excluding public order, police, and land, under entry 41 list 2, the Lieutenant Governor shall be bound by the decisions of GNCTD on services as explained above. To clarify, any reference to Lieutenant Governor or over services, excluding services relating to public order, police, and land, in relevant rules, shall mean Lieutenant Governor acting on behalf of NCTD.